Your body is not tired because it lacks energy. It is tired because it never receives the right signals to recover it. You keep trying to push output without reprogramming the system that generates power. And the harder you force yourself forward, the more your system shifts into survival mode. A state designed for short bursts, not sustained living. If nothing changes, you don't just feel drained. You begin living below your actual capacity, believing exhaustion is your natural state. It isn't. Your body operates like a coded system. It does not respond to motivation, guilt, or pressure. It responds to patterns, signals, and environmental inputs. Right now, many of the signals you send throughout the day tell your system one thing: stay alert, stay tense, stay ready. But recovery requires the opposite message, and if that message never arrives, your energy reserves remain locked. The first code is this: safety precedes energy. Most people try to restore energy by adding stimulation, caffeine, noise, urgency, more activity. But energy is not produced in a system that feels threatened. When the nervous system perceives constant demand, it shifts resources toward vigilance, not restoration. Muscles stay slightly contracted, breathing stays shallow, digestion slows, cellular repair is deprioritized. You are awake, but not rebuilding. Safety, in biological terms, does not mean the absence of problems. It means the absence of immediate threat signals, and many of those signals are created internally. Racing thoughts, constant evaluation, anticipation of what might go wrong. If your mind never exits problem detection mode, your body never enters recovery mode. Teaching the body safety starts with something simple and mechanical: slowing your exhale. The nervous system reads breathing patterns as status reports. Fast, upper chest breathing equals alert. Longer, slower exhalations equals safe enough to downshift. You don't have to meditate for an hour. A few minutes of extended exhale breathing, especially in the evening, tells your system that defense can soften. Another safety signal is predictability. When your schedule, reactions, and environments are chaotic, your body stays guarded. Even small routines, waking at similar times, consistent wind-down patterns, structured pauses, reduce background vigilance. Predictability lowers energy spent on monitoring, freeing energy for repair. If this idea challenges you, observe your own state during the day. Are your shoulders tight without you noticing? Is your jaw clenched? Is your mind scanning ahead constantly? These are not personality traits, they are defense signals, and defense consumes fuel. The second code is energy returns where attention settles. Your attention directs physiological resources. When your focus is scattered, your energy is scattered. Multitasking is not just mentally inefficient, it is biologically expensive. Each switch of attention triggers micro-adjustments in neural networks. Hundreds of these adjustments create fatigue without visible output. But when attention stabilizes, the system organizes. Brain activity becomes more coherent. Movements become more efficient. Emotional reactivity drops. You use less energy to do the same task. This is why moments of deep focus often feel strangely energizing, even if you worked hard. In those moments, internal noise decreases. Fewer systems compete. You experience temporary coherence. Coherence reduces drain. Teaching the body this code means deliberately practicing single-channel engagement. Choose windows where one task receives full attention, no parallel inputs, no background consumption. You are not just improving productivity, you are reducing metabolic waste created by cognitive switching. And there is something else. Attention carries emotional weight. When you constantly shift focus, emotions don't complete. Minor stresses accumulate. That emotional backlog shows up as heaviness, not clarity. Focus allows emotional cycles to finish. Finished cycles do not demand energy later. The third code is recovery requires rhythm, not intensity. Most people oscillate between overdrive and collapse. They push until drained, then try to rest by doing nothing. But a system that only knows extremes never stabilizes. Energy recovery happens best in consistent, moderate cycles of engagement and release. Your body expects patterns. It expects periods of activity followed by deliberate downshifts. If downshifts never occur during the day, the system waits for night to compensate. But one sleep period cannot undo a full day of unbroken tension. Micro-recovery periods are the key. Brief pauses where you step out of input and output, no screens, no planning, no problem solving, just sensory grounding, noticing breath, posture, environment. These moments signal to the nervous system that not every minute is a demand. Without these pauses, the stress response remains partially active all day, and partial activation prevents full nighttime recovery. Rhythm also means respecting transitions. Jumping directly from high-stimulation environments into sleep confuses the system. Gradual shifts, dimmer light, quieter activity, slower pace, allow physiological systems to recalibrate. Energy is not restored in abrupt switches. It is restored in gradients. The fourth code ties the others together. What you do after effort determines your energy more than the effort itself. Most people finish demanding tasks and immediately jump to the next demand. No closure, no release. Effort without release creates accumulation. Accumulation becomes exhaustion. After any significant cognitive or emotional effort, you need a reset window. Not distraction, reset. A short walk, slow breathing, gentle movement, looking away from screens. These actions help metabolize stress chemistry and bring the system back toward baseline. Without resets, stress compounds invisibly. You do not notice the buildup until you wake already depleted. Energy is not just about input. It is about clearance. Just as important as producing energy is clearing the byproducts of stress and focus. Resets perform that function. When these four codes operate together, safety, focused attention, rhythmic pauses, and post-effort resets, the body begins to trust the environment again. Trust allows downregulation. Downregulation allows repair. Repair restores energy. You might expect dramatic results overnight, but this is system reprogramming. Subtle shifts accumulate. You may first notice less afternoon crash, then clearer mornings, then steadier mood. These are signs the system is reallocating resources from defense to restoration. You have spent years training your body to stay on guard. Now you are teaching it something new, that recovery is allowed. If this perspective is changing how you see your own fatigue, pause for a moment and acknowledge it internally. Awareness is the first signal of change, and if you want to continue learning how to work with your system instead of against it, stay with this line of thinking. Energy is not forced back and it is unlocked when the right codes are running. What you are really doing here is shifting from a life driven by output to a life supported by regulation. And regulation is what determines whether energy is spent or renewed. There is a critical distinction most people never make. Stimulation can make you feel energized temporarily, but regulation is what allows true energy to be restored. Stimulation pulls from reserves. Regulation rebuilds them. If your days are filled with stimulation but empty of regulation, your body enters a long-term deficit state. You keep functioning, but with shrinking margins. This is why people often say they feel wired but tired, alert yet depleted, awake yet heavy. That contradiction is the signature of a system running on stress chemistry instead of recovered energy. When the safety code begins to operate, the first change is subtle. Baseline muscle tension decreases. You might notice your shoulders drop more often, your jaw unclench, your breathing deepen without effort. These are not small things. Chronic muscular contraction consumes energy constantly. Releasing it is like turning off appliances that were running all night, and the mind follows the body. When breathing slows and muscles soften, the brain interprets that as reduced threat. Thought speed decreases, reactivity lowers. You stop spending energy bracing for what hasn't happened yet. The attention code further amplifies this effect. When you practice sustained focus, your brain stops jumping between predictive models. Prediction is useful, but expensive. A mind that predicts non-stop burns fuel. A mind that engages directly with what is in front of it reduces unnecessary forecasting. You may also notice that focused attention changes how time feels. Moments feel more complete, less rushed. That subjective slowing is not inefficiency, it is coherence. And coherence reduces internal friction, which conserves energy. The rhythm code prevents depletion from accumulating silently. Without rhythmic pauses, fatigue builds in layers you don't perceive until collapse. With rhythm, you interrupt the buildup. Even brief pauses signal the nervous system that effort has limits. Limits allow systems to reset before breakdown. This is similar to interval training, but for your nervous system. Effort followed by release trains resilience. Continuous effort trains exhaustion. The reset code after effort might be the most overlooked. Think of how often you finish something mentally demanding and immediately pick up your phone, check messages, or move to the next task. That is not transition. It is continuation. The stress chemistry from the first effort remains active while new demands pile on top. A true reset is neutral. It gives the system time to process and clear. Movement helps metabolize stress hormones. Slow breathing restores balance between activation and relaxation systems. Sensory grounding pulls attention out of abstract thought and back into the body. These resets are not a luxury. They are maintenance. When you begin applying these codes, resistance may appear. Part of you might feel restless during pauses, uncomfortable with stillness, tempted to reach for stimulation. That discomfort is not boredom. It is withdrawal from constant activation. Your system has been conditioned to equate busyness with safety. Changing that requires patience. But on the other side of that adjustment is a different experience of energy. Instead of spikes followed by crashes, you begin to feel steadier. Instead of waking already depleted, you start the day closer to neutral. From neutrality, energy can be directed toward meaningful effort rather than wasted on internal noise. There is another benefit here: emotional stability. When your system is regulated, emotional responses are proportionate. When exhausted, even small stresses feel overwhelming. That reactivity further drains energy. Regulation reduces that loop. Notice how all four codes are interconnected. Safety enables down-regulation. Focus reduces cognitive waste. Rhythm prevents overload. Resets clear residual stress. Together, they form a cycle that supports renewal instead of depletion. This is not about becoming calm all the time. It is about ensuring that activation is followed by recovery. You can engage fully, work hard, think deeply, as long as recovery is built into the system. You may begin to see your energy not as something you have or don't have, but as something influenced by how well your internal systems are coordinated. When coordination improves, energy becomes more available without forcing it. Pay attention to your afternoons and evenings as you apply this. Do you feel slightly less drained after focused work? Do pauses feel more natural over time? Does nighttime rest feel deeper, even if sleep duration hasn't changed? These are signs the codes are running. And remember, this is not a one-day fix. You are retraining patterns that have been reinforced for years. Consistency matters more than intensity. Small, repeated signals teach the nervous system what to expect, and expectation shapes physiology. Energy recovery is not dramatic. It is quiet. It feels like less resistance, more clarity, smoother transitions. It feels like your system is working with you instead of against you. You don't need to chase energy. You need to remove the barriers that prevent it from returning. These four codes are those removal tools. If this way of understanding fatigue feels different from what you've heard before, take a moment to register it. New models create new possibilities. And when you begin operating from a model that respects how your body actually works, exhaustion stops being a mystery and becomes a solvable system problem. There is one more shift that completes this framework, and it may redefine how you see tiredness itself. Fatigue is often a feedback signal, not a failure. Your body does not randomly withhold energy. It reduces available output when regulation is missing. It is protective, not defective. When the system detects constant demand without recovery, it lowers performance to prevent deeper damage. What you call exhaustion is often your body enforcing limits you have ignored. Understanding this removes the internal conflict. Instead of fighting your tiredness, you start decoding it. Low energy in the afternoon may signal that rhythm is missing. Mental fog at night may indicate insufficient resets after cognitive effort. Waking heavy may point to incomplete shutdown or unresolved tension. Energy becomes information. When you listen instead of override, you begin adjusting inputs earlier. You take a pause before collapse. You close loops before overload. You regulate breathing before stress compounds. Small course corrections prevent large deficits. This is how high-functioning systems operate. Constant feedback, constant minor adjustments, not dramatic interventions after breakdown. You might also notice that as energy stabilizes, your sense of time pressure decreases. Urgency often comes from internal overload, not external demand. When your system is strained, everything feels like too much. When regulated, the same workload feels more manageable. Capacity changes perception, and perception influences stress. A day interpreted as overwhelming activates defense. A day interpreted as manageable allows engagement without panic. Regulation shifts interpretation automatically. There is also a relational impact. When your system is exhausted, interactions drain you further. When regulated, connection can actually restore energy. Social contact is not inherently draining. It is draining when your system has no buffer. All of this points to the same truth. Energy is systemic. It emerges when multiple variables align. Sleep, attention, safety, rhythm, resets, each is a lever. No single lever fixes everything, but together they change the equation. You are moving from a model of pushing harder to a model of aligning signals. Pushing works temporarily. Alignment works sustainably. If you keep applying these codes, you may reach a point where you wake and notice something unfamiliar. You do not immediately scan for problems. There is a moment of neutral awareness. That moment is not trivial. It means your system is no longer in automatic defense at the start of the day. From that starting point, effort feels chosen rather than imposed. That sense of choice conserves energy. Compulsion drains it. The goal is not to eliminate tired days. It is to prevent chronic depletion from becoming your baseline. Occasional fatigue after meaningful effort is natural. Persistent exhaustion without clear cause is a sign of system imbalance. You now have a framework to address that imbalance at the level where it is created, not just where it is felt. So as you move forward, remember this. You are not trying to manufacture energy. You are creating the conditions under which energy is allowed to return. Safety tells the system it can relax. Focus reduces waste. Rhythm prevents overload. Resets clear accumulation. Feedback guides adjustments. That is how you teach your body to recover, not through force but through signals repeated consistently. If this understanding changes how you view your own fatigue, hold on to that. Insight is a signal too. It shifts behavior subtly, and those subtle shifts are what retrain the system. Energy recovery is not loud, it is steady, and steady is what sustains you over time. At this point, something important becomes clear. The real problem was never that you didn't have enough energy. It's that your system never learned how to cycle energy correctly. Energy in the human body does not work like fuel in a tank. It behaves more like a flow in a dynamic network. It rises, it falls, it reallocates, it repairs. When that flow is blocked by constant activation, unresolved tension, fragmented attention, and absent recovery signals, you don't just feel tired, you feel stuck in a low-energy loop. What these codes do is restore movement to the system. When safety increases, defensive tension decreases. When tension decreases, circulation improves, breathing deepens, and oxygen delivery becomes more efficient. This alone changes how energized you feel, because cells finally receive the conditions needed for repair. When attention stabilizes, neural networks stop firing in chaotic patterns. Brain activity becomes more synchronized. Synchronized systems waste less energy. Less waste equals more available capacity. When rhythm is restored, your body stops guessing what comes next. Predictability reduces the metabolic cost of constant recalibration. Your system can prepare for effort and prepare for rest instead of remaining in between both. When resets follow effort, stress chemistry doesn't linger. Hormonal activation rises when needed and falls when complete. Without that fall, you live in partial activation, and partial activation is one of the biggest silent drains of energy. All of this leads to something most people have not felt in years: baseline stability. Baseline stability is when you wake up without immediate strain, move through the day without constant internal resistance, and end the day without feeling like your system is collapsing. It does not feel dramatic. It feels normal, in the healthiest sense of the word, and that normality is powerful. You might have grown so used to functioning in depletion that stability feels almost strange at first. You may even misinterpret it as a lack of stimulation. But stimulation and vitality are not the same thing. Stimulation spikes. Vitality sustains. The more these codes run, the more your system shifts from spike and crash patterns to sustained output. You don't burn bright and fade, you maintain. Another shift happens too. Your perception of effort changes. Tasks that once felt draining begin to feel manageable, not because they became easier, but because you are no longer starting from an internal deficit. Effort from a stable baseline feels purposeful. Effort from exhaustion feels like survival. This is why people often confuse burnout with laziness or lack of discipline. In reality, their system has been running without proper recovery architecture. No machine performs well under those conditions. You are not fixing motivation. You are fixing the structure that supports motivation. Notice how different this approach is from trying to push through. Pushing ignores signals. Coding the system responds to them. One creates cycles of collapse, the other creates cycles of renewal. And there is something quietly empowering in this. You regain influence over how your energy behaves, not by controlling every variable, but by shaping the core signals your body uses to decide whether to spend or restore. You start seeing tiredness not as an enemy, but as data. Overstimulation? Add a reset. Mental scatter. Return to single-channel focus. Persistent tension? Reintroduce safety signals. Irregular pace. Reinforce rhythm. Small adjustments, repeated, change the system trajectory. Eventually, the mornings change in a way that is hard to describe but easy to feel. You wake and there is space before thought accelerates, space before pressure appears. That space is recovery made visible. And from that space, the day unfolds differently. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of brace. Energy becomes something you direct, not something you chase. This is the difference between living on reserves and living in balance. You don't need more force. You don't need to become someone else. You need your system working the way it was designed to work, in cycles, with signals, with recovery built in. That is what these codes teach. Not how to squeeze more output from exhaustion, but how to unlock the energy that was already yours, waiting behind layers of constant activation. And once that process begins, something shifts quietly but permanently. You stop asking, how do I get more energy? And start asking, what signals am I sending my system right now? That question alone can change the direction of your days and the quality of your life.